We are continuing our program. Alexandra, what do you think about the report that is fully generated with ChatGPT? I hope someone has created one. Well, important topic, not only generating a report or a paper, but also data set generation and synthetic data generation. We would like to ask our next speaker, Eldus from Burbank, will talk to us about an important issue for each and every data scientist. How can you get the data? Well, it's not generated using ChatGPT, but it's not guaranteed. Thank you.
Меня зовут Фатахова Юлдус.
Everyone, I'm Ildus Hatahova. I work in Sber, and our product for generating synthetic data is, it's hard to see because of the very light slides. I'm the product lead, and I will tell you what we do here. Let's preview the problem. Why did we start to work on this product? You heard a lot of news about personal data leak. And if you think about why this is happening, one of the main reasons is because many people, especially big data providers, have access to that data. And this is why that data can leak, and they often do. And a simple solution is just to avoid giving that data to the provider. But analysts, scientists, and developers, they can create value from that data. So, and that value can be monetized not only to money, but to NPS. So we need to devise an alternative to the real data, such that the scientists, developers can continue doing their job, help us do our business. So what are those alternatives? Let's have a look. Of course, those are the personalized data and anonymization algorithms. We take our original data set and we mix the attributes, the column in those data sets, and using custom algorithms, we can keep the structure, we keep the data types. So you can actually use it for example, high-load testing. We can do easier things, keeping the correlation, like pseudo-anonymization. When we find a column, when the person is identified, and we delete them, mask them. Everything else remains the same. They're real data. You can work with them. You can use them for analytics. And the third way is to create synthetic data that would allow you, because they are generated using specific rules and specific parameters of original data sets. They're generated not from the real data, but they're fully synthesized. That's why they allow to generate much more data than the original data. Because if previously I had 50 entities, I would get 50 entities. But with synthetic data, we can get as much as we want. So here is a resume of all the approaches. First way would be anonymization. It really secure all the connections between the passports and the surnames are deleted. And the speed of getting that data is high, but we cannot use them for analytics, for data science, for function testing. Second way, with a correlation. We can use it for functional testing or data science, but it's not secure, because if you know some extra attributes for that data, you can re-identify the client. And those experiments were held by us, and it is actually possible, so it's not safe. And with synthetic data, they are fully secure, they are not derived from the real data.
Также все хорошо, можно использовать для
Correlation is the same,
но ресурсы емкие.
connections are the same, but it requires a lot of resources, because creating synthetic data is really requiring a lot of effort. You can do it manually, or you can do it using machine learning. If you do it manually, then you need analysts, and it's hard. But if it's machine learning, you have a lot of data scientists that need to work with that machine to be able to synthesize the data. So let's draw some conclusions. Synthetic data are not modified real data, they are generated, they keep the structure of the dataset, and they protect the client data.
Хорошо использовать.
I spoke a lot about using synthetic data in development, but that synthetic data are often very much required for machine learning. And Gartner has created a report that I like very much, saying that by the 30s, the amount of data used by the machine learning, 80% of the data will be synthesized. And it's easy to understand because we need more and more architecture.
Очень много данных.
And neural networks require a lot of data. You need to get it from somewhere. And here you can just get 10,000 of real data objects and get a lot of synthetic out. The positivity for the business, the value for the business, you protect the personal data. You don't need to get any separate access. You just order it. You don't need to go through some audit, stuff like that. Also, synthetic data increases availability of data for the AI applications, and it allows you to lower the cost. Because if we want to create some data sets, you need to gather them. You need to mark them up. It's expensive.
Соответственно, синтетика нам удешевляет.
So, synthetic data reduces the cost of research.
Все так классно.
Why not use synthetics everywhere?
В этом есть определенные проблемы. Первое, что создавать ручные генераторы сложно, долго, под каждый новый датасет.
First, creating manual generators
Соответственно, для воспроизведения
is hard because
аномальных событий аналитику нужно
to represent the anomalies, the analyst needs to really work a lot to find them.
Если мы используем
And it increases the amount of time we need to spend. For smart generation, we need to create a separate model for every type of data.
Опять же, нужно высаживать целые команды.
And this also requires special team. We faced all those issues in our company when we worked on the other project,
Мы решили сделать сами для себя сервис
and we decided to create a service.
генерации синтетических данных с помощью машинного обучения. В нем нет ни единой строчки кода. То есть
It has
пользователю не нужно сделать, не нужно написать ни одной строчки кода. Соответственно, он умеет...
You don't need to write any code to use it. It can generate files and databases,
насколько нужно пользователю, и обеспечивает безопасную работу с...
and it is safe. No data, no real data can be leaked. Let's have a look at an example how it works in the companies with the closed contour,
где работают разработчики, сcientists, аналитики и так далее.
with scientists and analysts.
Внутренний контур у нас Есть пользователь, у него есть
Let's
доступ.
imagine we have an internal counter. We have access to data. We have an application
Сделай с ними что-нибудь.
where
Первое, что мы делаем, мы
the customer can come and
профилирование
ask for a specific data. First thing we do is we profile the data set. It means we need to get the domains and
здесь еще что-то.
look at surnames, passports, remove them. If the column has no PII, then we say
Пользователь
nothing to worry. And we show it to the user.
может заказать обучение модели.
When the user says everything is fine, then
В этот момент наши винтики вертятся.
we can start training. The model is being trained for quality metrics, and whenever we reach them, and we have a lot of them, the model is put
Получить
into
Он приходит во внешний контур,
the
заходит в наше
transponder.
приложение и
On the second stage, if the user wants to get some data, he finds his model in the normal model. Then the special service
Если ему все нравится, заказывает синтетику,
switches to the external module. He can order the specific amount of data and where it needs to be stored, and thus we generate and put that data there.
Пожалуйста, включите демо, оно совсем коротенькое.
Let's have a look at the demo.
Как это работает?
Синтетические данные
We'll
открывают
just see how it works. Synthetic data creates new opportunities to work in working with AI. They have no personal information, and they keep the relationship between database entities. To get synthetic data, you need to get the example and run the task. For example, an online shop wants a new recommendation system. The team just needs to give the access to the data without giving any information about the clients or their purchase. We create a task for generating the base, and we just give the system an example of the real data.
о клиентах и их покупках.
We set up the amount of lines we need,
Предлагает алгоритмы генерации для чувствительных данных.
and the model will give you the algorithm for generation. You can modify the ways data is generated. For example, in the user field, you have some information you don't want. You can correct that.
Задача настроена. Запускается процесс обучения и генерации.
After the task is being fine-tuned, the user gets the synthetic data as database dump or as zip archive. The amount of synthetic data can be checked in the generation report,
персональных данных, а также
and you can check all the parameters. And also you have the metric to identify the similarity of the data.
и файлы.
Also, you can get the training data through the interface by creating a connection between the data.
Одинаковые распределения.
Data received don't differ from the real, and even the connections between the tables are kept.
Да, вот такое демо. Надеюсь, вам
So
понравилось.
here's the demo. I hope everybody likes it.
Там сейчас было очень много бизнесовых продаж.
Let me tell you what's under the hood.
Что же там внутри?
A lot of business discussion taking place. The tech is standard, the microservice architecture. Python is our main language. All the ML services are created via Python and PyTorch. Let's start with the steps. First step is profiling. We know how to define which column has which type of confidential data. We use two different approaches: rule-based approach, regular expressions, and also we have new models that help us identify names, surnames, and other text fields.
Мы умеем работать и определять тексты. Если в текстах
Also, we can find text, and if some confidential information is there, we will find it and highlight it.
сможете выбрать, как его сгенерировать с помощью
We'll be able to
заполнить какой-то рыбой.
decide what to do with it or fill it with some boilerplate information. This is how we use synthetic data, and this is how we ensure security of the data. We get the real data and profiling report,
Где есть
and what does it do? It actually looks just looks for the confidential information. If the data set has attributes, column, that can help you identify the subject of personal data, the analyzer will work in a way to avoid putting that data into the model so that the model does not learn the number of passports, for example, for a specific person.
в модель
We don't need it, so we don't give that data to the model.
но при этом параллельно нашей модели мы
At the same time,
которые мы не отдали
we
нашу модель.
analyze the personal data that we don't give to the model.
Например, есть
We have personal data connected to some attribute. For example, the surname and name can be connected to the sex, but sex of a person is not confidential information. Region, not confidential. We need to generate the data in a way that keeps the same connection between them. We analyze using our algorithm which PDNs were connected to the other columns in the dataset to keep the consistency. Something goes to our model and some things are getting analyzed separately to get a consistent dataset.
Собрали наши
So here's how we get the rules, get the model, the data, and put it all into Pickle and run the generation. When we generate, we use the PDNs to generate them with our smart generator, depending on what the model has created. If it generated 60% of women, 40% of men, then we need to add this amount of names, surname, etc.
Мы тоже умеем работать. Не стоит переживать за то, что в текстах что-то протечет. Мы найдем, что изначально был
You can
Иванов Иван. И эти
be
данные
sure
We see that originally the transfer was made in the name of Ivan Ivanov, and we do our best to maintain the consistency of the data. In other words, we expect to have a similar man with the same profile.
модели у нас тут работают.
What kind of models do work here?
Картинка, ну ладно, я вам так расскажу.
Well, the alignment of the image was distorted a bit. That's okay. What models do work? Currently, we rely on two basic approaches, and I'll explain the history of both. Initially, when we got involved with synthetics, we had just one key customer, our internal customer, who came and ordered it from us. And we engaged in our search to find out what was used for artificial data generation. We took the model that existed, tried to generate synthetic data, and we didn't like it because the distributions were distorted in the output, while the correlations were maintained. However, the distribution was distorted. So we started looking at other methods, including our SDV library, and we found there the method that we liked, the coupled database, and we looked at the data there and found it to be better. So we decided to look in the direction of classical methods. There should be a square here with one square for classical method. we completed our research and found out that with classical method, the output would be even better than with the neural network. So we collected the entire zoo. We included tree-based approaches, clusterization, and came up with our own model. Over time, customers would come, we kept on generation, and we found out that although the classical methods were great, we didn't know how to generate tons of data. So we realized that we still should go in the direction of the neural technology. We've seen a lot of derivatives from Citigan, Citafgan, Citplus, and so forth. We started playing with all the various flavors. However, all our outputs were far from perfection. Based on Citigan, we designed our own architecture. We modified the vectors, slightly changed the architecture, and came up with our own neural network. And today, we use two approaches, one of them based on classical methods and the other one based on the neural technology. How do we decide which of the two to choose? Previously, we used the heuristics, but now we opt for the model, which of the pipelines is more effective and efficient to help us get the best model possible. Our model does not only know how to work with files, but also with databases. If we take Citibound from GitHub now, or if we go for any other library, we'll see it. You can come with multiple data sets. We will build such a picture, such a block diagram. We will establish relationships between clusters. Each cluster will be used to train our own model. For us, it's important to maintain relationships between the tables. If we tell the model that we have 4 tables interconnected with keys, we demonstrate that they are interrelated. Therefore, if you have customers in your regional data and from the order table you want to see a list of orders for a specific customer, you can just add condition the ID or customer ID equals something, 3, for instance. If we know that in the regional data specific customers completed specific purchases with this synthetic approach, all those relationships and links can also be restored. They are not obvious. However, with these 4 tables, they can be reproduced. Who were we looking at when doing development? We looked at modern methods. Here we demonstrate Citigan data, and there is also an Austrian startup, which is #1 in terms of synthetic data generation, and it is them with whom we compare our performance. And here on this graph, you see the distribution for the comparison of artificial and original data for the age column. When it's colored, it means that the distributions match. On Citigan and Stepgan, you can see those orange ones, which means that there is no full match. Let's look at categories, for instance. I don't remember what this one is about. I don't remember exactly, but in this case, it's the overall picture that's of interest. Here, we know how to categorize, while Citigan and Stepgan are not perfect in this sense. We can work with data that are not perfectly pure,
Часто нам задают вопрос, а как же вы перформите?
Quite often, people ask us, how do you cope with machine learning with your synthesized data? I'd like to show you a piece of our research, namely how we worked with Titanic, which is a well-known data stack. You're well familiar with it. What's the point of the experiment? We take the data set and split it into the training and test groups. For a regional, we get 0.82. Well, we generate synthesized data based on various frameworks, and we try to predict our target variable with the use of test data. And these are the metrics that we get as an output when we use our solution, CityGAN, GAN, and so forth. As you can see, we're not far from the original metrics. We all know that the Titanic dataset is pretty small with a limited number of columns, and it is a categorization task. Let's look at how we manage the regression task. In regression, we try to predict the cost of insurance for our customer. We used our R2 metric, where the original yields 0.86%. For Sber, we got 0.83, while in reality, the number of columns is bigger. Now let's try to have a look at what's going to happen if we provide a real data set for training. Here, there come CityGAN and StepGAN. Nevertheless, we are really close to them in terms of results. Let's also have another look at the metrics. What we do in order to train our services, we split our metrics into two major classes, the internal metrics and the user metrics, user report metrics, and we show the users how the distributions match, as well as the correlation metrics. If the distribution matches, everything is okay. Moreover, for each table, we show two basic metrics. First, the silhouette coefficient, which shows to what extent the cluster of synthetic data and original data are close to each other. If the matching rate is close to 100%, is great. Otherwise, it may mean that the other one is pretty far away. The second one is reproduction of correlation relationships, the extent to which the original data set metrics have been maintained. On top of that, we calculate a large number of synthetic cases. There are about 20 of them, and here you can only see 4, the most popular ones. The others, they are for those who are interested. You're welcome. Don't hesitate to approach us. We will give you more information. In total, there are about 20 of them. We also have data security metrics that we also estimate. We show to our users that no personal data have leaked. You can see all those zeros here. Moreover, we try to make sure that there is no noise in our synthetic data. Well, there may be such noise, which will result in the lack of matching, but the cause of it, the only one, is the presence of noise. To avoid that, we do a number of things. And what's the outcome of all this? We work as Sberbank, as Sber internally, and these are our results. As far as machine learning is concerned, our leakage is never bigger than 3%. which helps us save about 10 man-days, given that the synthetic data will be generated internally with our services. Now, the data that we get is pretty relevant, which helps us to save on the time spent on hypothesis testing and development. Well, that's it as far as my presentation is concerned. This is the QR code of my link. Well, to get access to it and to use it, you need Ministry of Digital Technology certificate. Once you are there, you can order a demonstration. Don't hesitate to use our service. Well, if it fails to work, you can always write me directly. You can share your Telegram. I'll give you mine, and we'll be in touch. Well, please let me remind you that we give gifts to those who ask the best questions. Have you ever experienced data leakages? Have you ever detected such synthetic data leakages where you can see that they are still in the network, but they are not the way they used to be? And one more question. Did you ever try to set traps? As to the first part, we have never ever experienced any synthetic data leakages yet. We would have known otherwise. Since synthetic data are very much like real-life data, and we have never ever heard about such cases, and we have never played with the traps. But since we are asked about that, we can do it. We haven't been asked to do it so far. Maybe at a certain point in time we'll do it. Well, the question is, who is asking? Well, I can tell you for sure. Well, we're waiting for the next question. I'd like to ask mine. Quite often, recommendation systems, such as ALS and more complex transformers, quite often they require a lot of log data, click rates data, and so forth. What is your biggest synthetic data set? Well, currently we're not working with any huge data sets, but once we developed a database for 180 tables, for which we generated about 2 million entries. Hi, can you tell me about the limitations of your server, your service? What task it is unable to deal with? Currently, it works with text and tables. Is it going to work with images and other types of data? Good question. I forgot to tell you about that. Yes, you're right. Currently, we're only working with tables. And we have in our backlog working with images, medical data. We haven't got down to it yet, but it's in our roadmap. We're going to expand on synthetic data generation. Will it be possible to follow you in real time? What you have now, what you're going to have? Not at this point, but you can always reach me in Telegram. Well, I believe that we'll be doing it for external markets. Currently, it's our internal story, and we're in no position to open those backlogs. Next question, please. I have a simple question. What's the minimal data set, volume of data the user should download in order to get a valid result? There are different reference books for colors, for example. We know that there are 10 of them. We'll have 2 tables, and we will not be able to generate such table, such database. Well, in fact, you can upload table with 1,000 entries, we'll replicate it. There is no limit for the number of columns. Well, if there are only 2 columns, it will be a kind of a reference, and we may experience problems with such a table. We usually work with bigger tables, up to 1,000 entries. We know how to work with them. Reference sources such as metro stations, there is no point in using your technology to work with them. As to relationship tables, is my understanding correct that with 500 relationship clusters, you'll be training 500 models? Is that right? Yes, that's correct. Thank you very much for your presentation. My question is as follows. It's not always that the task of the data scientist is to identify correlations and so forth. Sometimes it's about finding abnormalities. When you generate this statistical set of data, to a certain extent, it will be mirroring the reference set, the original set. But because of those abnormalities, it will not work the same. What are your plans for inclusion of such abnormalities or deviations? That's a good question. Today, we only reproduce original data. Let's assume there is a deviation. We can reproduce it. We have experimented with it. We know how to reproduce abnormalities. And data scientists may come and tell us, look, we need abnormalities. Why don't you give us more? I don't see any more hands on this side. About this one, just in case.
Спасибо. Если синтетика настолько же хороша, сколько реальные данные, есть ли какая-то...
If synthetic data are the same good, is there any idiot-proofing mechanism? Not at this point. However, we used to receive such requests at our company internally. So far, we haven't reached any consent, any unified conclusion. Any more questions? I have a question. Are there any legislative limits or constraints for making such data open source? I think this needs to be always discussed with the owner, with the customer. Even with synthetic data, there may be protections or hidden data, concealed data, like a certain type of transaction is mostly performed by 60% of women and 40% of men. It's demographic data that may not always be published. Another question. You said that you were going to expand to open markets. My question is, when and how much? Oh, that's a tricky question. Of course, I don't have any pricing information right now, but if you want to buy something, you're always welcome. Just contact me and we will organize a meeting and discuss it. And the price will depend on the solution. Yeah. Text me or email me. Well, this should go to the previous presenters. I see another hand. Meanwhile, I'll ask a very brief question from myself. I know there are email contests. Have you ever taken part in a competition or where a data set would be generated with the use of this product? Yes, of course.
Форму, наверное, в начале этого года.
Because the product is in its very cradle, and it was only shaped out in the beginning of this year. I see a hand on the left. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Одна аномалия, я увеличиваю выбор
How about abnormalities with absent land?
человека, а один
Well, a data scientist may be keen about understanding that there is just one person, not four, and there may be correlation-related abnormality. I can see if there is a general table, it will not show such correlation. The metric may say that everything is okay, while it's not the case. As to your second part, the second part of the question, the answer is yes. These metrics are pretty plain and simple. To make sure that they are understandable by ordinary people, not only data scientists, these tables, they are mostly for analysts and QA specialists to be able to understand that their data are either good or bad. At this point, we are not including more complex things. As to the first part of your question, will you remind me of that? It was about abnormalities and absent land. Well, look, I can tell you how many abnormalities there were there, 1 or 4, but the percentage, will be more or less the same as in the original data set.
Что будет в таком случае?
Окей.
And we can always address the developers. Well, we have time remaining for the very last question. No question. Well, let me ask my question then. At your website, I found out that a deal can be made without signing an NDA. But are we expected to sign such a non-disclosure agreement with you? Yes. Well, now, please pick 2 best questions.
За классные вопросы.
Here a question was asked, a really awesome one. It was yours, and I would also like to pick the lady who asked the question about the models. Well, that's superb. Thank you very much for this very illustrative presentation and cool product. Thank you. It was really great, very interesting, especially for laymen, because there are always questions: how to generate attacks, how to do checking. With this, thank you very much once again.